If you're looking for proven ways to take your fundraising results to the next level, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Intentional Fundraiser Podcast, hosted by Tammy Zonker. Tammy has trained and led thousands of nonprofit organizations to collectively raise more than $500 million and is also recognized as one of America's top 20 fundraising experts. This is the podcast where Tammy equips and empowers amazing fundraising pros like you to transform your fundraising so you can transform the world. And now, let's hear from Tammy.
We'll start the show in a moment after a word from a few amazing fundraisers about what they value most as members of Tammy Zonker's Fundraising Transformers community.
I have had the honor of learning and growing from Tammy. She has really helped us understand how to communicate better with our donors, how to make sure that our mission is at the front line of their decision making, and she has just been an absolute joy to learn from.
That's Stevie Shoemate from Chapters Health Foundation in Tampa, talking about how being a growth member is helping her communicate better with her donors. When you join Tammy's Fundraising Transformers community as a growth member, you get live training and coaching with Tammy twice each month. You can get your burning questions answered during her live Ask Me Anything sessions. You get to join in Tammy's live weekly hot topic discussions. You can engage with other fundraising pros like you in her private and safe online community. And you get 24/7 access to her growing library of on-demand fundraising training videos and tools. Here's Jenna Sapluski from the Coalition for Children, Youth, and Families in Milwaukee, talking about how being a growth member in Tammy's Fundraising Transformers community is helping her grow her capacity, her skills, and her confidence as a fundraiser.
It's been so helpful for me to grow my capacity and my skills. I feel more confident knowing that I have Tammy and the Fundraising Transformers group for support. I've reached out to Tammy and the group on several occasions, whether it be just some wording for an email to say, hey, can somebody give me just a little bit of feedback on this? I'd love your thoughts before I send this out for an initiative.
We'll hear more later in the show about why Jenna values having access to Tammy's members-only on-demand training library. To learn more about the Fundraising Transformers community, visit fundraisingtransformed.com/growth.
Today on the Intentional Fundraiser Podcast, I am delighted to be talking with Francesco Ambrogetti about the role of emotion in fundraising. Francesco leads UNICEF's innovative and alternative finance area for children. And over the years, he's been fundraising internationally for more than 20 years across 4 continents with organizations like World Wildlife Fund, Doctors Without Borders, and the Red Cross World Bank. He's also Professor of Fundraising at Bologna University in Italy and has authored various books, including Emotionraising and Hooked on a Feeling. And if that wasn't enough, he's a conference keynote speaker. In fact, that's how Francesco and I met. We were both keynote speakers at the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference in San Diego last year. And then earlier this year, we were both speaking at the AFP International Conference in Las Vegas. Francesco, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Tammy.
Oh, well, the pleasure is all ours. So, first, Francesco, I'm always curious how people find their way to becoming a fundraiser. How did you get your start in the profession?
There are many ways, as you know, each one has its own story, different stories. I don't think there is one story, and I don't know, maybe you can edit this in the podcast, it will be a long story. But apart from, doing some grant work for some NGOs and other things in the arts sectors, while I was finishing my master's, I was here in New York, completing my studies, and I ended up meeting this community group in Lower East Side. At the time, New York was in this big it still is, but at the time was pretty strong gentrification program, driven by Robert Moses. And the East Side was particularly affected. So this community in Lower East Side was Lower East Side is where all the first generation of migrants were arriving. Poor people expelled from Europe, Scottish, Germans, Italians. And so they were resisting about the fact that this will be completely gentrified. And so they managed to buy the land and the buildings, and the inhabitants were also trained to be carpenters and plumbers so that they can fix it. The interesting part was also that they did all this raising money, basically. So this was all possible only because in Manhattan, at the center of this gentrification, Wall Street, this community were able to raise money to buy the land, buy the buildings, and stay where they are. So that was sort of wow, this is incredible. So the community has the power to find resources to fight a big movement that is capitalist, but raising their own money. So this is also inspired me to move on into this business and just say, well, this is something so powerful that can change so much, and it's all about raising the money that need to fulfill your mission. So that was the beginning, if you want.
Yeah, I love that. And I can see that it would be inspirational. I think sometimes when we are so in the weeds of the work, it's easy to lose sight of the power and the inspiration of philanthropy. Yeah.
Exactly, yes.
It's a great story. So first of all, congratulations. Emotionraising and Hooked on a Feeling, they're amazing books. They are not the kind of books that you read once and put on the shelf. They're the kind of books I think that you read, you dog-ear the pages, you go back to them, you keep them handy. And, one of the fundamental truths of the book is that giving evokes those feel-good chemicals like oxytocin, right? The love hormone. Hence the name, the title, Hooked on a Feeling, which I thought was very clever. So school us a bit on behavioral economics and how emotions drive our decisions and shape our behaviors, particularly related to philanthropy and giving.
Tammy, this is a really broad question and actually requires course itself. And in fact, that's what I taught in the university. No, because it's a really, really fast evolving, broad field, multidisciplinary. In fact, it's not just behavioral economics, it's just a branch that looks at the behavior in a objective way. I'm trying to be more on the side of neuroscience, which is, again, it's a big broad, which includes psychology, of course, includes neurology, and includes economics and marketing. So it's a very vast field. But the assumption has been relatively new, but also recent, but also now I would say about 34 years, the acknowledgement that the more we know the brain, so the where we evolved, the more we understand that the assumption that the stars did, we at school, we just say cogito ergo sum. I am because I think. As a human being, we are superior, or we are what we are because we are able to think. We react instinctively, right? Actually, it's not true. And actually, there is one of the first books is just say is actually a lie. The Descartes is a lie. We are not what we are because we think, but we are what we are because we feel.
Love that.
And this is not just it's a biological, right? It's a neurological part. So our decisions are, and this is also Daniel Kahneman and his Nobel Prize research and book. Our 90% of what we decide to do is driven by this big emotional part of the brain, which is sort of a subconscious, not totally unconscious, that is mostly based on what we touch, what we see, what we hear. Then our rational brain elaborates on this and we decide what to do. But mostly we are unaware. So the point is that when we are angry, when we are sad, when we are surprised, we instinctively unlock a reaction that is nearly physical. You want to just smash somebody in the face or smash the door when you're hungry, right? I know it's a typical thing. I don't know if you watch any sports, but if you're really into a game and somebody misses, you really want to just, and somebody does. That means that it's not totally reaction or it's sinful, because you need to have the concept of anger and sadness. Otherwise, you're not going to be taught. It's not all about it's sinful, but that's what drives our decision. So that's why it's important, because the giving is substantially activated by this dynamic, by these emotions applying. Of course, And I explain this very much in the book because people especially think, oh, well, therefore you need to make people angry or crying. That's not that simple, because you can numb emotion. Imagine now the example of the Nazi in the camps, right? They were able to completely ignore things that you would see. How can you not see the suffering and the pain, right?
Right.
So it's not just a simple create a reaction so that you instinctively react, but ignite this emotions are so powerful that then move people to do things. And that's the distinction. Is if you want people to do things like buying a stuff, donate, signing a petition, you have to act on these emotions. If you want people to reflect and think and change their mind, you have to use rationality. You have to use numbers. You have to use logic. But that's why giving is an act. It's an act, right? You have to donate online. You have to write a check. You have to pick up a phone. If you want people to do that, you need to leverage these emotions, of course, in the right way. So, and the more neuroscience look into that, the more prove that this is the fact. Prove that then when these are activated, the brain releases hormones. You mentioned the love hormones, the oxytocin, but it's not the only one. When we are listening to a story, watching a video, there are different types of chemical release. One is definitely cortisol, but the other is, oxytocin. The other is cortisol. This is stress hormone. So you need to get people get stressed and uncomfortable, because in fact, what we're dealing with are not simple, easy causes, right? We're talking about violence against women, right to abortion, violence against animal, children trafficking. So these are things that you need to provoke stress. Then you're going to just say, there is a way to get out of your stress, to contribute to that. Then you're going to feel better, contribute to a big. So it's a very complex dynamic, if you want, that it's also interesting that you can observe in a way. There are labs, neural labs, and you can put people, and where they're watching things, ads, and websites, you can clearly see sort of a reaction. And you can just measure your heartbeat is higher, your skin conductance is going to be more duration, your eyes are dilated. So that's things that you can really measure. And actually, I did, and people do, just say, okay, this is actually moving people, and this is actually not. And when people say, okay, Tammy, would you donate to these causes, right? You're gonna get your answer based on what, but what you answer is not what you really do, is what you think, because when you happen to do, it doesn't correspond to what you're saying. That's because the rational part doesn't correspond to what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So essentially, people are emotional donors looking for and may rationalize their emotional decision to give.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like when you buy another pair of shoes that you don't really need, right? And
yes.
Then you're going to say, well, actually, I need it because the other are worn, or because just trying all sort of justification. But the initial go on Amazon and things and buy, or on the shelf, it's totally emotional.
Yes. I don't know why you had to bring that up, Francesco.
I don't know.
Oh my goodness!
It comes to my mind.
don't criticize my shoe purchases.
No.
Well, here's a question. We're emotional donors. Like, we feel something, we feel a stress, we feel like there is that emotional catalyst, and that call to action, that response. Yeah. How do we keep the emotional flame ignited after the initial donation, especially for those who give maybe in response to a major disaster like a tsunami or a hurricane, or a man-made disaster like Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Or what if they're giving in what we call a rage giving response, in response to an incident or an issue that angers us, like the murder of George Floyd, or when Planned Parenthood was defunded here in the US? How do we keep that flame alive?
That's a very good question, and actually, it is actually the book kind of film that you mentioned is all about this. And I think in our profession we put everything under retention, right, or appreciation, and we just think that it's a pure technical thing. Oh, but look, if you just do thank the people that donate, show what you do with the money and ask again, everything will be fine. It will not be. It's just way too technical way to look. You mentioned, rage donors. In fact, you mentioned disaster donors. Actually, in UNICEF, right, we are dealing with a huge wave of new donors that came through either COVID response or Ukraine, and we struggle with the same issue. I remember, this is an anecdote. One of my first experience was during the first tsunami, right? It was Boxing Day after Christmas. Totally unprepared. Digital was not even a thing at the time, and we were submerged by the amount of money people. And we thought, okay, so if we go back to them and just say thank you for your donation, this is what we're doing, we still need your help. How can it be difficult? People came and donated, and we had a disaster response. So none of them responded. So at that point, how is that and why is that? We get the same exactly. Planned Parenthood get the huge spike of and same ACLU during after the Trump get to power, right? Remember this spike, and they lost most of them because they say I sign up and I don't see any of the things that I find. In George Floyd, you mentioned many things. The emotions are so strong that are sort of unpredictable. And in fact, it's a Minnesota. I don't remember the name. Liberation Fund. It's a small fund that just pay for the bailout.
It was the ACLU.
No. It was during George Floyd. There was a small organization that paid for the bailout of people.
Yes, for bailing out protesters. So giving so that protesters were not kept in jail.
And they get 30 million in one night.
Yeah, 30 million.
They normally get 1 million overall in 1 year. So obviously people were upset to say, why don't you spend the money? Just to say, well, guys. So you understand that the response was so much dramatic comparing to the capacity organization. So we have this big, how are we going to keep this flame? I think most of the biggest mistakes, and I also investigate, Connie campaign, Icebook Challenge, same thing, is that we think exactly that since people came on board on this wave of rage or sadness, it's simply to just keep asking and get them. Actually, they didn't, because they come out to a totally disconnected to you, right? They come on an event, come on a, and they find a way to deal with their hunger, with their sadness to donation. They find you, but they don't really donate to ACLU or UNICEF or Planned Parenthood, right? So the mistake we all do, just say, go back and ask for more.
Yeah. So let me just pause.
Yeah.
So just for clarity, so they're not really giving to the organization.
No.
They're giving to try and feel better about that horrible thing.
Or making a point. So I just say, I hate Trump decisions and policy on migration. I support ACLU.
Yes.
And the same happened, doing, with candidates, right? In the United States. So it's a making a point, dealing with my hunger. What can I do? The only way I can do is just making a stand, making a point, and I donate for ACLU, Planned Parenthood, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But they don't really want to support that organization. It's their way to deal with the grief and the anger. And then you come back months after, imagine, right? 6 months after, just say, well, now it's the time for you to give an extra thing. And they say, I don't even remember. I supported that. And by the way, what you have done to, deal with this? The point of my book and all the thing is that these donors are not your donors because they did deal with it during emergency and a raid. They were trying to deal with these things, making a point. The mistake you do is to not try to know them better, which is all the point. So I always say the first thing should not be even the thank you, should not even be the upgrade, the request, the conversion. Should be thank you, of course, but let me take time to know you better, Tammy. Why you came on board? What was your point? What we can do better to deal with your rages? And try this dialogue to know you better is the beginning of keeping those donors. Not all of them, of course. Most likely, 80% of them will not going to continue to give. They will give in the moment. But those 20%, they really now just say, okay, I'm not giving just because of rage or response to the stuff. I really like that. I really, and you know me now. You know that now I believe in this cause, have these values, have 3 kids, And this is the beginning of a different relationship. So you can keep some of those donors if you know them better. How many organizations take the time to do that? Very few, because all our machines just say, okay, now I need more. So go back and convert into regular donor. Go back and upgrade it. Go back and ask for more. This is the only thing we know, which is not wrong. I'm not just saying it's wrong, because of course, asking is a way to engage them. But the point is, if you don't bother to know your donors, especially those that came for the first time, and so if you know better, you can just say, okay, these are very committed, and I keep it there. These are not committed to different things. These are very happy, I keep it here. These are not very happy. Why they're not happy? Because we mail them too often, because we mistake the names, because so you see, you start seeing your donors in a different categories. That is not just the amount they give, the reasons they give, and the frequencies they give. And I think this is the biggest discussion. Even in Advocate Challenge, same issue. I had that discussion. Yeah. Big success. They are unable to keep it because you don't even bother to go back to people. Just say, okay, great, you've done this. You want to support ALS or no? You believe in this. Why is that? You have somebody that's close, and they completely ignore that. And that's why the flame is missed, because we keep them all in the same thing, and the only thing we can do is ask for more.
Yes, yes. So ways to get to know our donors better. Certainly surveys are one tool. Mm-hmm. And it feels like the trick is to, like, how, if we can get more of them to participate in the surveys, what advice or counsel do you have for how we get to know them better?
Well, it's the simple answer is a dialogue. Simple, which is, of course, survey is one thing, but dialogue is a one-to-one conversation, human conversation. And, oh my God, how can I do? I have too many donors. Well, it depends all in the type of results. And we see that, when I was in Italy, we had this department called Donor Love. They were just doing just that, start a dialogue. Nothing will substitute the dialogue. No survey will substitute the dialogue. Yeah. The second thing is to try to ask people, how are we doing? And this is a simple 5 phases from green to red, or 1 to 10, tell us how we did it. How do you find the experience? Every time somebody can just say, help. This is also helps you to understand better the donor, because those that bother to respond, they care, right? It's like you. Sometimes if you're, you get in a commercial, you get these things, how we do it. Sometimes it works. But if you're really upset, you just say, that was terrible, they would treat me badly, you mistakenly, right? And then you start again a different relationship. So survey is important. By the way, survey depends what you have. Survey has to ask very few questions to be able. And what we find out, the most important driver, or what you should ask are 2. 1, how committed you are to your organization, from 1 to 10, because that tells you somebody passing by or very close. And second, how happy are you with our organization? How satisfied you? These 2 give you a different picture. So though they are highly satisfied and are committed, have a huge lifetime value concerning them. It's hard to distinguish one from the other.
It's really helpful. Thank you. I'm a huge believer in the power of emotion, and our listeners and members of my fundraising transformer community hear me say all the time, nothing happens until somebody feels something. And yet, often as fundraisers, we encounter resistance from board members or executive leadership, or even our program staff saying our fundraising messaging is too emotional, right? Or they want us to water it down in some ways.
We're back with growth member Jenna Zapluski from the Coalition for Children, Youth, and Families in Milwaukee, talking about how having 24/7 access to Tammy Zonker's on-demand training library is helping her become a better fundraiser.
Since joining the Fundraising Transformers group, I have had the opportunity to go back and rewatch a host of trainings on such a wide variety of topics, from how to work with my team members inside my organization to how to get my board excited and passionate about fundraising, and topics like how to reach out to a donor and how to get a meeting with a donor.
Here's Stevie's shoemate from Chapters Health Foundation in Tampa, sharing that as a growth member in Tammy's Fundraising Transformers community, you're never alone. How members of the community support one another by sharing resources and lessons learned to help solve tough fundraising problems.
You oftentimes learn from other people across the entire country, which is really nice because it helps you understand that you're not alone in your fundraising challenges. I was just sharing with someone the other day that it really helped me feel like I wasn't the only one experiencing these challenges, knowing that someone from New York or New Hampshire or Texas, people all over the U.S. with varying communities and different fundraising strategies, we're all in this together.
At the end of the show, we'll hear why members enjoy learning from Tammy and what you can expect when you join as a growth member in her Fundraising Transformers community. To learn more about the Fundraising Transformers community, visit fundraisingtransformed.com/growth.
What advice can you give us when we encounter resistance to the use of emotion, or at best, again, that pressure to water down the emotion?
Well, there are two things. First of all, it's not either or, and it's not just one way to express an emotion. As I say, the emotions is a vast, there are 6 core emotions, and there are many nuances, right? Second is that there is science behind, and talking with the colleagues and the board, just say, look, this is not what I think. This is not what the team thinks. Practice and science shows this is how we get people to move, donate. If we wanted to change their mind or inform them, okay. But if we wanted to, then this is how it works. Doesn't mean that everything should be, stereotypically dramatic, tear-jerking, or showing things that are, no, this is not. And that's why you get a test, right? To say, okay, so the best thing, let's test different type of messages and see how people respond. There are thousands of examples. Put a smiling child and a sad child, and a sad child will speak. There are different ways to picture that and to tell the story, but this is how it works. If you wanted people to move, that's normally how you're gonna convince. It's not an easy battle. You still have this complex argument of pornography, of poverty, and all these things. And I think that there is a merit, because there has been a lot of stereotypical and badly done short-term thinking about that, and short-term fundraising about that. But the fundamental is true. You need to disturb people, first of all, because it's disturbing the cause we do. Then you need to show them that with their contribution, things get better. Doesn't mean to make them the hero, not at all. I don't believe in that. But it needs to show the value of what they do. So they feel better, but they contribute to something. This only happened with the emotions. And then, I found it strange that the same resistance that we find internally, I don't see against commercial world, against advertising, against cinematography, against anything where this is pretty common practice, right? Nobody just say, oh, look, the Godfather is too emotional. Or I just say, right. So I just think we have to be careful. I agreed on the fact that sometimes the stereotypical and the short-term thinking is hurting and is becoming too damaging. I agree on that. But having said that, my only point, like for you, I believe, the North Pole is the story. If you have a good story that is real, that is reflecting the reality where we're working on, of course, with the right protection of vulnerable subjects, but if the story is right, the story always wins, because it's true and because it works better than the script.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like clear, simple, human, and yet honoring the person whom story we're telling, right? So What is the phrase, like, tell the story from the scar, not the wound?
Exactly.
Yes.
But, I think, Tammy, I mean, for me, how are you going to get the attention, only the attention of donors, I don't know, on children in Yemen, Syria, after 10 years that nobody even cares, they now care more about Ukraine? How are we going to get, because I'm going to show the statistics, how many children die in Yemen of hunger, or I'm going to just use the report, I'm going to use, it's impossible. We are in a difficult world, actually a horrible world, unfortunately, a difficult situation in which the only way you can catch attention and convince people is to tell stories. Stories are not made of only the nice ending, happy ending. You need to get Cinderella that lose the shoes and just maybe miss the prince forever. You have to create that moment, not create the story, create themselves. Convince people. It's harsh, and otherwise, what's the reason why it exists? Because there is hunger, because there is despair, because women are neglected the right to fundamental rights, because of migrants are still, and so on and so forth. Actually, I think we do a disservice, and we are untrue to ourselves. We don't show this out.
Yes. I often say that you can't truly appreciate the sweet taste of transformation or impact unless you've also tasted its bitter beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so then understanding the science of neuropsychology, that comes with ethical responsibilities. We've been talking about this, but are there some, like, what are the boundaries that you recommend? Even in your work at UNICEF, what are some examples of, I hesitate to say this, but brand standards that are your guide rails? Yeah.
It's very difficult. It depends really by the situation, right? And I think, as I said, first of all, get the story as a driver. It's a real story, and it is done with the community, with the people you try to help. Obviously better. I don't even think that making sensational or something works better. Sometimes the simplest thing works perfectly fine. But I don't know exactly. I mean, in today's world, okay, what are the ethical guidelines on the George Floyd? George Floyd were all over the world.
Yeah.
And it was harsh and, excruciating to watch, but also, unfortunately, powerful to move people to perhaps enough. Can we stop George Floyd images? I don't think, and nobody can, even if we want.
Yeah.
Can we stop the images from Ukraine coming up? I mean, I remember the huge discussion on, it was this kid dying on one of the shores in Turkey, try to,
yes, washed to shore.
Yeah, exactly. So there was, okay, now that was also, that was the famous photo on the Vietnam, right? The famous photo of the girl. I'm not just saying that we have to go, but we need to respect and protect vulnerable people, of course, especially children. We cannot just simply. But in a scheme of a story that exemplify, the challenge and the problem and the terrible situation we live in, sometimes we need to show you what hell is.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
otherwise, if I tell you don't see it, right? If you see it, it's only when you just start maybe realizing that, and even then it's becoming more and more difficult. That's the other point. How many Ukrainian, children, dead, literally wounded, abandoned, you can do move people,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that there must be an ethics, because there must be a respect and protection of vulnerable people. There must be an avoidance of stereotypes, especially when it comes to white people and male and this type of thing. But if the story is true and it's real and it's reflecting the reality you try to change, and if it's done in support and agreement with the community, I don't think there is a big issue. I think that there are many examples of people who do it right. And look, I also believe in sometimes there is people wanted to see the challenge that is overcome, but they want to see the challenge. Why you ask me for my help, right?
Yes. And I think that, consent can play a role. So, for example, if we take the case of George Floyd, I mean, what we saw was horrific, right? We saw a horrific murder, racial profiling, terrible. But I was inspired by the fact that his brother wanted that story, George's story, to be shared worldwide so that it could mean something, so it could move something. And I think that we have to acknowledge, especially when we get pushback, that there is consent. You know, even Ahmaud Arbery, like just through the work of our mutual friend, Birgit Burton, who's the AFP Global chairperson, she works with Ahmaud Arbery's mother, and they founded the Ahmaud Arbery Foundation and are doing such good work in his name. And so I think that, to your point, that sharing that story, the truth of it, the pain of it, can be a catalyst, and consent can be a tool for us to really propagate and expand that story and really make true change.
Yeah, no, and look, I mean, I don't know, there are many examples. I think the famous campaign years ago, Charity Water, in which, you know, a little girl, I don't know if you remember, she was raising money for Charity Water and died tragically in nothing. And then the mother and the father decided to use her story to raise more money for Charity Water and then go visit the project. Also, through her story, she found people find this is too much. I find it really, it's not very inspiring. We just teach at the top. It was not pornography. This is actually very inspiring. A little girl had to raise money to build more water for kids like him that were less fortunate. Unfortunately died, but her gesture can inspire. In fact, other million people to get large impact. This is not what we want to show. I had a wonderful story. It's one of my favorites. It's this recycled orchestra. It's in Paraguay. This is a community that lives literally on a landfill, right? Garbage. They live it on the garbage, out of the garbage. Pretty terrible condition, right? And here, the only way the teacher find a way to move the kids is to teach them music, but he only can teach classical music. So can you imagine the violin cost is out? So they teach the local community to build the violins and all the things from what they found in
the landfill, from the rubbish.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they have an entire orchestra made of recycled instruments. They play Vivaldi. They play. So the kids start and they're touring the world. So this is a wonderful story, right? Really, really wonderful story. But to get you there, I have to show you where they live. I have to get you into landfill. I have to show you where they, you know. Otherwise, you don't get it. You know, the nice part, which is beautiful, is hope and think. You only get it if you can see where they come.
Yeah. I think we as fundraisers and as organizations, like, we've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Right?
Exactly.
Yes, like, we've got to make that okay. Like, this uncomfortable feeling that I feel, or that my board member or my executive director or my CEO feels in sharing the trueness, even the rawness of the story, that means we're doing it right.
Right, exactly. No, exactly. No, this is very important. And I think, you know, if you want to wish that our profession will use more the science, in the sense that, like the commercial do, so to say, okay, let's see this out in the lab, how people react, let's research, because then you will see that how things working in a sense. And it's not subjective. It's also on many of these discussions. That means that I think, and somebody said, no, that's what I think. It's becoming, I think, you think. It's never a discussion based on, okay, what works, right? For the people you're trying to address. Not for everyone. That's the other problem. You try to convince everyone. It doesn't work the same thing, right? If you want to convince somebody about right to reproductive health, it cannot just apply, appeal to everyone. What's your audience? That's another important question.
Yeah, know your audience, right? Know your supporter base, which you've made that point a couple times. Like, know why they care, why they're giving to you, or would be likely giving to you. Yeah, okay. I mean, I think that is it is, as you've so eloquently shared, like, it is a walk down a path between telling the truth and really the neuroscience of it and the results that are we know are possible to serve more people because more money was raised, and just honoring and respecting those involved. So it's a path, and there's a steep drop off on, yeah. And so finding that balance, and I suspect in my experience too, even as a fundraiser, but also coaching and consulting with nonprofits, is that it's an evolution. Organizations don't go from 0 to 100, right? It's like let's get from 0 to 5. Let's get from 5 to 10, right? And so it's a journey.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah. So can you tell us about a campaign that you think used emotion exceptionally well and was like inspiringly successful from a financial contribution perspective?
There are many. I mean, I think I find it strange that when I mentioned, for instance, only 2012, people forgot about the campaign, which was a tiny organization in San Diego. They managed to get globally, especially young people, exciting and donate and engage in hundreds, thousands and tens of thousands of millions raised about this obscure, land warlords that in Uganda, there was abducting children.
Yeah, so that's for the listeners. It's Kony, Kony. You can search it on Google.
It was one of the most iconic campaign at the time.
Yes.
People forgot, but the idea was really, really wonderful. Was the idea just say it's a terrible person, right? Criminal, still at large, abducting children in Uganda, by the way. So if we make him so famous, just talking about him, diffusing, using social media and donating, we're just gonna maybe move the authority to catch him, and at the same time we can help children that are affected. And that was so simple and powerful because you used wonderfully this capacity to get rage, because you're gonna see more children suffering, but it's also gonna get a purpose to just say, okay, what can I do? Make him famous, right? And donate. So it really was wonderful. It was such a small, tiny organization. They raised so much, and show with the right story, with the right use of emotion, you can really drive so many people into. And in a sense, if we look at simplicity and they give the sense of people, what can I do? Sometimes we just say it's too big for me, and what can I do? It's hard. And so sometimes the bigger campaign are the one that have a simplest idea, and also the fact that it's achievable, right? For me, I can see that I can contribute towards something. And I think this is, for me, still one of the great campaigns. And paradoxically, though, the sad story is also in the book. And this organization nearly bankrupt after that. They were not ready. There were too much money. They lost all the donors. They were literally nearly nearly close to bankrupt.
Yeah.
Because again, they were unable to keep this flame alive. They were unable to go back to donors, understand who they are. Most of them, they were first-time donors, young donors, Americans, and they didn't have the infrastructure in place to do that. Of course, it's all the things, but it's such a shame, because I think every time we just light the flame like that, doesn't matter if it's for Kony, if it's for reproductive health, if it's for George Floyd, and we let people down because we don't fulfill our promise, we don't come back. It creates a gap, and because these are all people that then are going to be disillusioned in our causes forever. Just say, next time I just don't bother. I donated, they don't even acknowledge me, they don't come back to me. Why should I? So I feel sad for Kony, I feel sad for Icebreaker Challenge, I feel sad for George Floyd, because I think that it's not just for the organization of great causes, but because for all our sector, we are losing all these donors because we are unable to fulfill the promise, get back to them, knowing better, and give them better.
And we leave those donors really feeling disillusioned. Like, why should I even bother? What difference will it make anyway? Yeah. So it really is. It's on us to continue carrying that torch. And I love that you had a department called the Donor Love Department. And I know that not all of our listeners are as large as UNICEF, but if you had a Donor Love committee of volunteers who would make those phone calls, who would do the one-to-one calls about, it's incredible that you gave. Thank you so much. Why do you care so much about this cause or this issue, or what inspired you to make that first gift to us? That's how we can, even in a small organization or a big organization, that's how we can move the needle and keep that fire ignited.
Yeah, and the interesting thing you mentioned, the donor law was, we have an acquisition department that was doing all the acquisition of donors. Then we get the retention department. So they were doing the thank you, the upgrade, the conversion, all the post-acquisition. Donor law was on top of that. Because all they were doing, they were just exactly do the initial call to know you better, the satisfaction. And one of the things that I always mention, people just say, what is the simple thing you can give an advice to make a difference in this? I just say, well, believe it or not, it's called a birthday call, which is a simple call to say happy birthday. No other ask. You're important for us. This is an important day. Want to just call to say happy birthday. Think very simple. Now, when you see the results, we split the file into one, just get the same communication, one, just all the same communication, and this call. There were 3 to 5 times giving more, 3 to 5 times lifetime value, just a simple call.
Wow.
Now, why is that? Because who's calling you for birthday today? Who is taking the time? Many of our donors that were in the elderly side, and they were just the only call they had that day. And so, you see, when it comes to the practicality, it's that simple. Now say, oh, how can I have all the money and resources to call all my donors? But then just make the math. How much more money you're going to make with the simple call? And then you just factor in if you can do it or not. So because then it all comes down to that, with a simple call to say happy birthday.
Yeah, that human touch. We see you. We care. You're special.
Yeah. Exactly.
Love it. Love it. Francesco, I could talk to you all day.
Me too.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is such a deep topic and we have so little time. I just want to open it up. Is there anything else you want our listeners to know about the importance of emotion in donor engagement?
There are many things. As I said, this is a very fast-evolving field, especially outside our sector. And so there are a number of directions you can take, but definitely I think Seth Godin is a very good guide on the marketing sphere. You want to follow him. One of my all-in buddy, but it's really, I recommend to follow and to see what he's doing, is called Paul Zach. He's the guy that discovered the oxytocin in giving, but he has all a range of things he does. And recently he got this call, it's called immersion. Immersion is basically very simple measuring through an Apple Watch, similar. What are you feeling while you're watching a DRTV ad or similar? And give you exactly if it works or not and which part works or not in real time. So you have a very simple low-tech technology that can tell you if the ad, the website, that the email you're watching, people are really engaging emotionally or not, so that you can just change, tweak, and see that thing. This is the latest thing he does, and I think it's very, very cool, and it's a wonderful guy to also be in touch with.
Oh, fantastic. So we'll include a link to some of those resources in the show notes, in addition to the link to your books and right, where to find you. All right. So Francesco, at the end of each episode, I'd like to ask a few rapid fire questions. Right. So you ready?
Yep.
All right. First one, what's the best fundraising advice you've ever been given?
I don't know if it's fundraising advice, but I think one of the best advice I had is just that you can spend a life making a point, or you can spend a life making a difference.
Love that.
This is one of my mantras. Sometimes I end up into making a point, but then I realize, what's the point exactly? So it can complain a lot and arguing, but how are you going to make a difference with that?
Yeah. Inspiring. Thank you. So this was a tricky one. What book do you recommend to our audience and why? Of course, in addition to your two brilliant books.
I think Tribe from Seth Godin for sure. I think Emotionomics from Dan Hill is another good, really, really good book. And then I think one book that I recommend because it's the way the story are talking to you and interplay and show these emotions. It's Paul Auster for 3 to 1. It's a big book, but it's intertwined various stories in a way that I think is very, very interesting and inspiring.
Very good. What do you think are the 3 most important traits in a fundraising professional?
I think passion for sure, rigor,
Mm-hmm.
and I think curiosity.
Curiosity. Passion, rigor, and curiosity. Love it. What's your favorite fundraising tool or application?
One of my favorite tools now is the this immersion tool that I mentioned before. I love it. I think if we all can use that, imagine, you can just say, okay, I have a new mail, a new copy, a new video, and I can just say but you don't need thousand. You can need 200. Say, I'll show you. You don't have to tell me what you think, and I can see if it works or not. That's great.
Test. I mean, it's a great testing tool. Absolutely. Absolutely. And don't take it. I mean, we all know that our staff, ourselves, like we are not our target audience.
No, of course.
So it needs to be like a donor, a supporter who's close to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. It's just like you can't edit your own writing either. Now, this one could get you in a lot of trouble because I know you speak at a lot of conferences. Which is your favorite and why?
Oh, I know I'm biased, but I really think that the non-profit storytelling conference is my favorite.
Yeah.
Because I know I talk to people, and maybe it is still on a naive side, if I can say that, in a sense that it's still comparing to the big conference, the AFP and etc. Relatively small but that's what makes it valuable, right? And people are just genuinely. They don't go for specialists. They don't go for, I just only go for this. They really go eager to know and to engage. And I like the idea there is a conference that is not about picture the nation or whatever, but it's about storytelling. And I think it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely on my top list. And of course, it's coming up October 27th through the 29th. Something like that, end of October. I'll be keynoting there.
Great.
Yeah. Will we see you, Francesco, this year?
I don't know. I'm not sure yet.
Okay. All right. Well, I certainly hope so. You were fabulous last year. Last question. Knowing what you know now about fundraising, what advice would you give your younger self just starting out in the profession?
To not listen to gurus.
Not listen to gurus. Yeah.
And this is not disrespect to gurus or anyone, but I mean, I think when you're young and naive, you obviously need for guidance. You just get drawn into the things. Say, oh, but this guy and this woman is amazing. And I'm in debt to many of them, let's say. But then the way you do fundraising is completely in a way different. It's completely what you make and how the organization make it and how you firm it. So sometimes there are things that are given like a set in stone, right? And you listen to the conference and people say, I don't know. And you say, oh, and then you just find out that this is actually not true. So maybe that's what the advice would give it to me.
I like that. I mean, what it makes me think of is maybe when we follow gurus also, not only can it not be true to your point, but maybe it kind of shuts off our thinking, our analysis, kind of puts us into, you mentioned Seth Godin, like lizard brain, right? He coined that phrase. Yeah.
Exactly.
So good. Francesco, thank you. Thank you again so much for sharing your wisdom. If you want to learn more about Francesco or follow him on social media, we've included the links to all his handles in the show notes, as well as links to check out his amazing books. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intentional Fundraiser Podcast with me, Tammy Zonker, and keep on transforming your fundraising so you can transform the world.
We're back for a final word about Tammy Zonker's training style and what you can expect when you join as a growth member in her Fundraising Transformers community. Here's growth member Jenna Sapluski from the Coalition for Children, Youth, and Families in Milwaukee.
Tammy is so encouraging. She's very empowering. She really wants you to succeed in your role, and that really comes through with everything that she does, from the monthly coaching calls to the monthly webinars. The guidance I've received from Tammy and other members of the Fundraising Transformers group has always been so constructive, so beneficial, and you can tell everyone in the group wants everybody else to succeed, because we all know what a challenging job it can be to fundraise for our wonderful causes and our organizations.
You may be asking yourself, can a growth membership really help me improve my fundraising results? Is it worth my time? Laurel Grow from Phoenix Family in Kansas City shared that her organization increased charitable dollars raised by 132% since joining as a growth member. Becky Chambliss from Awake in Anchorage, Alaska shared that her organization increased donor retention from 13% to 69% in about a year using what they learned from Tammy's training. And growth member Amanda Johnson from Multiplying Good in Indianapolis shared that her organization exceeded their annual fundraising goal by 104% and grew overall giving by 13% in 1 year by applying lessons learned from Tammy as a member of her Fundraising Transformers community. Here's member Stevie Shoemate again sharing how she and you can grow your fundraising skills as a growth member of Tammy's Fundraising Transformers community.
This is the first fundraising role that I have ever been in before. So at 30 years old, I'm kind of wondering, well, how do I rocket launch my fundraising expertise? You learn from Tammy Zonker. That's what you do.
Become a member of the Fundraising Transformers community. To join our live monthly training and Ask Me Anything sessions and get access to our growing library of on-demand training videos and tools and share lessons learned with other fundraising pros like you in our private and safe online community, visit fundraisingtransform.com/growth, click join, and get started today.
That's it for this episode of the Intentional Fundraiser Podcast. If you like this podcast, subscribe and download each episode on your favorite podcast platform. Share it on social media with the hashtag #TheIntentionalFundraiser and tag me, Tammy Zonker, and you'll be entered into a drawing for some great swag, books, and courses. And if you like today's show, you might also be interested in becoming a member of my Fundraising Transformer community, where I go live twice a month with my members with fundraising training and group coaching to help transform those fundraising issues that keep you awake at night, where I pull back the curtain on how you can take your fundraising results to the next level by teaching ways you can improve your development operations, create a results-driven, donor-centric development plan, strengthen donor relationships, improve your donor retention rates, and build a raging monthly giving program and a successful major gifts program, and how you can approach each day to ensure you'll perform at your highest level so you can be the best fundraiser and the best person you can possibly be. Thank you for showing up and for having the courage and determination to transform your fundraising so you can transform the world. Bye for now.